All right. We are back with another episode of the Parent Confidence Lab podcast, and we have a very special guest today. We have Elizabeth Wilberg here today. She is a CEO, mama, a volunteer, connector, writer, and an optimist. And she's currently the executive director for Episcopal Community Services right in San Diego, helping families far and wide across the board and doing a really good service for families and children that need it most. And so we're very happy to have you here today, Elizabeth. Thanks for coming.
Hello, Hans and Christina. It's my pleasure to be here. I love what you're doing to build parents' confidence and to empower parents. So thank you so much. And thank you for the opportunity to join you today.
Of course, it's such a pleasure to have you. So I'd love to just hear, first and foremost, from your side, if you could tell us a little bit more about your story, about how you came to this role and kind of what excites you in this role and your own experiences being a mom in this role.
Well, I was thinking last night, I was listening to one of your podcasts to kind of get in the right headspace to join you. And I started thinking about my journey as a mother and thinking that it was the thing that I was most clear on growing up and in my early adulthood that I wanted to do. I really wanted to be a mother, and I had ideas about what I wanted to do for my career and who I wanted to marry, but I was always just 100% certain that I wanted to be a mother, and I was determined to be a mother. So that's um, just something I wanted to share with you to start off, because it's really important to me, and I think it's my role as a mother has shaped a lot of the decisions I've made, and kind of the work that I'm interested in doing and the organizations I want to be part of. So um, I think that, being a mother and having experience with kids who had, special needs or challenges in their early days, kind of made me more attuned to what ECS does. And so here at ECS, we're a social services nonprofit, and we serve more than 10,000 people a year across the San Diego region. A large part of what we do is early childhood education for low-income families and also children's mental health. And so that's for kids up to age 12 who may be having some kind of behavioral issues, or maybe they've experienced trauma. It's a really special program, and we see such a wonderful impact in the community from that program. And then on the adult side, we do substance use disorder treatment and homeless transitional housing. So we're kind of across the spectrum of life experience there. But one of the things that I see a common thread is that a lot of the folks that we're helping as adults, they share the experience of something happening to them as children, something traumatic happening to them as children. Maybe somebody died, or they were hurt, or they went through something as children that really changed the direction of their lives. And so I often wondered, like, looking around our community, how different would our community be if all of these adults who are suffering now had access to the kind of care that ECS provides as children? So that is why I'm in that work, and so honored to support the work that our incredible team does.
It really does sound that, going both ends of that spectrum, your work with early childhood development is really that upstream factor and really making sure that, parents are very well supported, that children get that care that they need so that in the long term, outcomes for that child, for that family, those are better across the board. And so I'm curious just on, your work with adults. Do you interview them? How do you get their story, and what are the ways that you're, common themes that you're kind of seeing across the board? You talked about the adverse childhood experiences, I think. You know, can you talk about like how you're getting that data and what's really driving that?
that those stories are coming out during the course of their time with us, in their group therapy, in their times with our staff, the stories that they share with each other as they're building community with other clients. We hear those shared experiences quite a bit. And, a lot of on the adult side, a lot of the people that we are serving are coming out of homelessness, but they're also struggling with substance use disorder or some kind of mental illness as well. So, I mean, those are typically co-occurring challenges that they're dealing with, and a lot of that is rooted in something in their childhood or some kind of event that happened in their life that sort of pushed them off of their path. And so I like to say that at ECS, we help our little ones make strong starts, right? Strong starts in life. And then we help our adult clients make, strong restarts in their life, because there's always an opportunity to start anew. And so I think that is a really special place for ECS to come in and help to remove those barriers and empower people to make that happen.
Love that. And kind of looking at your programs, what kind of make your programs unique? What's kind of your special sauce, your secret sauce?
Really think that it's the love and compassion that our staff pours into every person that we serve. Yes, they have enormous technical expertise, a lot of training. Their credentials are very impressive. But what they do is they meet each person where they are, no matter who that person is. There's no one size fits all approach. It's really, what does this person need in this moment? That's where we start. And we're not pulling them along. We're walking alongside them and in partnership with our clients, whether they're 4 years old or 65. It's really the same approach. And I think that's what makes ECS different. It's really coming from a place of love and deep compassion. And we were founded by the Episcopal Church, and that that is part of our DNA. Those values of service, but also action. That is really incorporated into who we are and how we show up in the community.
Yes. And we know that you are serving a lot of families that are marginalized, that are time constrained, that are resource constrained. But at the end of the day, they want the best for their child and they want the best outcomes. I would say, almost every parent, has that fundamental love that they have. And so when thinking about the parents themselves, what are some of the challenges that parents are facing today? And what are the biggest needs in your experience? Helping parents. What do they really need right now?
I 100% agree with you on that. We all want the best for our children, and the families that we serve are no different. And we try to embrace the family with that tender care as much as we do a child who's in one of our preschool classrooms. We can pour so much into a child, but if their family isn't supported, then it's really doesn't make much of a difference, right? We want to be caring for that whole family and making sure that they have what they need so that family unit can kind of move up and out of whatever situation that they're in and go on to reach their potential. The parents that we serve are, they're very low income. They are, really struggling to feed their families, to pay the rent. Some of the families are living in their cars, or they're living at a shelter, or they're on somebody's couch. It's really like fundamental needs: food, shelter, work. So we try to connect our families with the resources that they need to, stabilize first and then start building. So what can we do with, job preparation, finding work, financial literacy. It's some things that some of us take for granted, but those kinds of things aren't taught. And so just creating a budget and being educated about credit and all of that stuff that can get people in real financial trouble. And also, we want to empower our parents to feel like parents are children's first teachers, right? So let's help them be, the best teachers that they can be. One of our programs is it's a literacy program for our Head Start students, and Head Start is a preschool program for very low income children, and our program is a literacy program where books are provided to the children, but then the parents also get coaching in how to read to their child. Because it's not just an obvious skill you would have, right? I mean, you can read the letters on the page, but I mean, this is about like engaging the child in the story and finding things to talk about, but then also building your relationship with that shared experience of reading a book together and really empowering the parent of like, this is something we do together and it's really special and we're creating memories. So again, it is just not a one size fits all approach. We're looking at each child and their family and really seeing what it is that they need and how we can support.
That's wonderful. That is so wonderful. I really admire the work that you're doing. And I'm curious, because it really struck me that in your title you put optimist. How do you think what is your experience with optimism and how does it factor into this work? Where did that come from? We've talked briefly about that. Like, were you born with it and how does it influence your work?
Well, I think the optimism part of it is just you might be born with it, but I think much of it is a choice. It's a choice you can make every day. And it's part of, I like to have an abundance mindset. And with that abundance mindset, if everyone's familiar with that, it's about, scarcity mindset is that there's not enough and you're operating from fear. And abundance is about, yes, there's enough. And it opens up possibilities and we're going to create opportunities and things are more open. And so I think abundance and optimism are really important if you're going to be in this work. And really, if you're just going about your daily life, because I'm a believer in what you put out there comes back to you, and what you imagine and what you manifest is going to come to you. And if you're always fearing the worst and staying small, then things are going to feel very small. And if you're kind of looking to the world as lots of possibilities and we can do things and being optimistic, I think that really changes the kind of risks you're willing to take, and it creates relationships with people who want to be part of that energy. And so, I mean, I think there's a difference between being an optimist and like a Pollyanna, you know. And so I wouldn't say that I'm, always like, oh, it's just, unicorns and butterflies all the time, because, I can be present to situations that are very serious and, be cautious of risk. But I think that overall, I just sort of trust that good things will happen.
Amazing. And I think that's a really, really positive mindset to take into parenting in and of itself, because, when I first became a parent, you hold that child's, you know, little body in your hands and you just want the best for them and you want to give them everything. I think that's something that a lot of parents can really relate to, but you also have to be optimistic by nature, right? If you're too pessimistic, then you're going to think about all the bad things that can happen, which certainly there's a lot. I wanted to go back to your own personal journey. You said that you always wanted to be a mom, and you are. You know, I'm curious, how that conviction and confidence, and I don't know what age that was. For me, it was actually around 8 years old. I wanted to be a dad, right? But so it's something that I share with you is weird. Like I used to kind of like plan out like these are the things that I'll cook to my for my kids when they're older, when I'm a father. But where did that really come from, and how does that actually parlay into the work that you're doing now as a CEO or executive director of an organization serving families?
I don't remember when exactly in my life that had the thought about being mother. I think it was I'd always just took it for granted that I would be one day. And I think maybe as I, became an adult, it became more of like, a goal in my view. And I really, I wanted to go to college and then go to graduate school. And after that, I was going to get married, and then I was going to have a baby by, age whatever it was. And so I kind of followed that path, and then I wasn't having a baby for years. Okay. And it was a very tough road of, this is not working. It's not happening. What is going on? This is like the thing I wanted. Why isn't it happening? And so I became a mother. My husband and I, my first husband and I, we adopted a baby who's now all grown up. She just graduated from college, but we adopted her in China. And so it was like after years of trying to get pregnant, and then we go to China, and then, we're told that she has this terrible health issue and that she's never going to walk. And it was very serious. And they said, they actually offered us to make a switch. We could go home with a different baby. And we said, no, this is our daughter, and we're going to take her home as we planned, and we will figure this out. And the doctors were wrong, and we got back to the States, and, we got great care for her. She was very weak. She was a year old. She was very weak, and she couldn't hold up her head, and she couldn't do a lot of things. But I wasn't that concerned because I have siblings who were adopted. And so I'd seen this before, and I thought, I can deal with this. And anyway, so she caught up with her peers by the time she was in first grade, and she just graduated from college with a degree in architecture. And so
Amazing.
I know. And so yeah, she was how I became a mother. And I'll never forget we were in this hotel room, and the orphanage director came up to me. She was holding Natalie and handed her to me. And I just remember that moment. It just gives me chills to think about, and those days following, I would have her in my baby carrier, and she would look up at me and just stare at my face, and it was the most incredible experience of bonding and love, just instantaneous love. And was just like knocked over by it, And it's funny because when I met Natalie's dad and I parted, and I remarried, and I wanted to have more kids. And so, we set to work, and it wasn't happening again. So this time we did IVF, and it worked. Boom, just like that. Twins.
Oh,
Yeah. And so we have twin boys who are 13 just as of yesterday. And it was a very difficult pregnancy, and they were born prematurely. And they were in the NICU for 6 weeks. And so I felt like with, both of these experiences, I'm like, I am so grateful, just the gratitude to be able to be up with them at 3 a.m. I was like never annoyed by that. I was just like, wow, I'm rocking my baby at 3 a.m. This is what I always wanted,
oh.
So it was kind of, tough roads to get there, and then just so sweet to finally have them here with us, all 3 of them. So they're my great joy. That's my greatest joy is being their mother. And I think as it translates to my work, I think just as a parent, you develop so many skills and your heart grows so much. And I think that not just for your children, but for everyone around you, I think you have a deeper capacity for understanding and acceptance and patience and compassion and all of these good things that come from being a parent that's going to translate into how you relate to people, how you are as a leader of people, how you are in the things that the environment that you want to create around you, how you want to, cultivate your team and support them and help them develop. I think that's so connected to being a parent.
Mm, yes, I love that. And thank you so much for sharing your whole journey. And I've also felt a lot of those things, and I always, think, and when I'm working with women and women leaders, I'm like, and they're worried about motherhood and how it'll impact their careers. I'm like, it will make you a better leader. I promise you, you will be a more understanding, thoughtful, compassionate leader than you could have ever been before, with a much deeper understanding of what your team is going through, wherever they are in that journey, right? In terms of like maybe trying and not having the success that they wanted, maybe and deciding they don't want to have kids, maybe dealing with young ones and trying to, work. I do agree that it gives you such like a deeper understanding of the human experience, right?
And I also wanted to add on that, it also, what you said, it makes you more empathetic for all parents because, parents go through a lot and nobody
Mhm.
really knows that journey. We certainly have a lot of friends that have struggled, and that's been really, really hard. And in our case, we've gone through a very big challenge as well, losing a child, and that makes everything even, you know, even as parents, with multiple children, it makes us very appreciative of that, of those moments at 3 o'clock in the morning, rocking your baby. I completely can relate, because it takes on a whole newfound appreciation. But I think that radiates out to how you actually carry yourself on a day to day basis. And the way that you lead is one of them being, empathy first and understanding and accepting, because the struggles a lot of times are hidden and you don't know what people are going through unless you actually sit down and listen, um, not as listen if they want to, right? And and yeah, I just wanted to say that's a really profound point that you bring up. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we, in our experience, we didn't have that quite that appreciation for parenthood, or for me for motherhood until, in some ways after the loss. And then I could see it so much more clearly, like how grateful I was to have even if my child's having a tantrum at 2 years old, like how grateful I was that she was here to have a tantrum and things like that. So I can imagine like having the longer kind of journey to motherhood makes you more appreciative of when you get there, of all of the things, the hard and the beautiful things.
Yeah, it's amazing um, how things can just shape your perspective and what you think is a big deal,
Mm,
right?
yes. Very true.
yeah,
Very true.
yeah, it definitely gives you that perspective, and the things that you thought were big, no, no, not at all. There's inconsequential, very little. Nothing's bigger than some of those other real things, right? So
And you do have to constantly remind yourself though too, because sometimes you fall back into the habits, and you're not maybe appreciating every moment like you used to. And sometimes I just like to remind myself, like, okay, just so glad that I'm here, they're here, everybody seems to be doing okay. Feeling great, very, very grateful for that.
yeah. So I wanted to go back to one thing that I see as a common thread throughout your parenthood journey, is really a strong conviction, and that conviction, that confidence that you said, no, we're gonna have Natalie, and we're gonna bring her home, and we're gonna raise her, and she's our child. And then also the conviction to, hey, let's try again, and let's try IVF, and seeing that through, and both of those outcomes, I would say, are a testament to the confidence that you have in yourself, maybe, you know, in some bigger being across the board. But without that conviction and without that confidence, life would have been maybe completely different. Right. And so I'm curious, if you could comment on like how that confidence in your decisions and the things that you've really put a lot of value in has really shaped the outcomes that you've experienced.
Gosh, what a question. For me, it wasn't about confidence, but really about just my heart and my gut and what I felt that I should do. It was part of it, I think, like with Natalie, was I have signed up for this, and she is my responsibility, and I love her, and I'm going to do right by her, and whatever that may look like. I'm in it. I already signed up, and I think, my mother was always so like fiercely. She's a fiercely loyal person, and she really shows up in a big way for people, and she just she's always there. And so I had that model, I think, growing up. And to that to be a mother, you you got to be like all in. This is it. This is the most important thing. And with the boys, I just felt that, I wanted our family to be bigger. I wanted more children. And I wanted to figure out a way to do it. Um, and boy, it worked. I mean, the doctor, the day they did the transfer, said, "Do you want to do 3 embryos?" It's like, no. It's a good thing I said, I can't imagine having triplets. So there's an instance where I wasn't super confident.
There you go.
So I at least was smart enough to be like, I think 2 is just fine. And she's like, well, you are, at an advanced age. I was 39 at the time. So they probably both of them won't take. And I said, well, that's okay. Let's just do 2. And it's a good thing I just did 2, because I got very, very, very sick, and it was very rough at the end. But I think it's just a lot of this is just gut and heart, and just kind of acting from those 2 places.
It's beautiful. It's very beautiful. And, going into this, I didn't know all the experiences you've been through, but listening, I mean, I think it's very valuable. I know we have many friends and family members who are kind of going through the process and trying to figure out next steps, kind of taken many steps and haven't been able to have a child, or are going through the IVF process, sometimes going well, sometimes not. What advice do you have, or what would you say to them that are maybe kind of knee deep in this process and struggling?
I think it's really hard. And I don't know how it is now, but when I was in the thick of it, people didn't talk about it that much. So I think if it's helpful to find people that you can talk about what you're going through, because it can feel kind of isolating, especially when all of your friends are having babies and people are saying, what are you waiting for? And you're like, I'm not waiting at all. So I think that it can be really isolating. It can put a lot of stress on a relationship, I think. And so my advice would be to just take care of yourself and take care of your relationship, and be very gentle with yourself and your partner through the whole thing. And know that if you're committed to being a parent, there's a lot of different paths that can lead you there. And they're different paths, but I took 2 different paths, and they worked out so beautifully for me. And I can't imagine my life any other way. I really feel that I was meant to be the mother to these children, and that I had trust in that it would all be okay.
Yeah,
That's beautiful.
that's really beautiful. And in a similar or small way, we can certainly empathize with a lot of that loneliness when you're going through really a feeling of grief. There's an internal level of grief that you're silently kind of keeping and processing, maybe with a partner. For us, losing a child was, um, horrendous. But going through that grief journey, we saw two different sides when it comes to support. We saw some friends who had, in a lot of times, lost a loved one. They were kind of outward, and they were, embracing, and they were listening, and they were there for us. Then we have a lot of other friends that didn't know what to do and did not show up. And even some of my, best friends, they have not texted nor called since that day. Now almost 6 years later. And, and so I think society at large doesn't necessarily do a great job with grief. And there's a lot of education that could be had, that could be valuable, that we just don't, get out there into the world. And so what would you say, you know, to the friends and the supporters and the colleagues of people who they know their friend is going through a struggle, infertility or otherwise? Like, how can they best support them without overstepping, without being too inquisitive, without saying ignorant comments like, "What are you waiting for?" Right? What type of best support did they give you? If you think about that.
Well, first, I want to just thank you for sharing your story so openly. And I think it just is probably so helpful to other parents who have suffered such an unimaginable loss. And so I just want to recognize you and acknowledge you for that. And I'm so sorry. I'm so terribly sorry for your loss. And I don't know. I, I don't think I have the answers for that. And I would love to hear from you. Like, what would you have wanted from those friends? What would have been supportive? What were you looking for? I know that, you know, not the behavior that they wanted or that they showed you because they kind of checked out. It was probably because of fear or whatever it was. What 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 would you have wanted, or what did you experience from the people who you said really showed up for you?
Yeah, I mean, uh, definitely a far-ranging question, but in terms of those that were very supportive, they tended to check in, like whether it's once a month, once a quarter, at some point in time. Even the simple things like, "Hey, I'm thinking about you," or "Hey, I'm sending you a big hug and love your way." Right? Knowing that you're going through a very lonely journey, knowing that you're not the only one, and there's other people out there that are thinking about you as well. Another thing was even just listening, right? I think a lot of times, if I can categorize different types of supporters of grievers, sometimes there's the ones that are trying to fix things. Hey, just get past it. Or others what say, stay strong. When in reality, you really should be weak and have self care. There's others that would send things, but not necessarily say anything, or but the ones that actually listened and that were there and said, "Hey, let me sit down with you. Let me take you for coffee, or let's go for a walk, or let me do a virtual Zoom call with you." And I just want to hold space for you. There's a big difference between holding space and giving space. Sounds the same, right? But holding space is actually, hey, I'm going to actually, be there for you, and hold that space, and so that you can grieve and cry and hug, right? And tell your story. Giving space is, hey, I'm just going to let you be, and you're on your own. I'm not going to check in. I'm going to just let you do your thing. Like, nothing that I do will ever change that, right? But giving space is a completely different, standpoint. And so, there's lots of different things, but those are some major things where I try to incorporate that in my own life. And now when I know that someone's going through a struggle, and I know it's the most important thing to them, just trying to be a mirror and try to reflect some of those things that were really supportive in our case.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I mirror a lot of those things. And then I always tell people, I'm like, just show up. Like literally, like if you can, make that flight, if you can physically be present, I always think that's the best. If they're a very close friend or family. And then if you can't physically be there, yeah, just still be there via, text or call. I always say, like, I never picked up the phone, but I remember every single person who called me. And I probably answered 10% of the text messages, but I still remember every single person who sent me a text message and what they said. I could probably recite it. So I always tell people, like, even if they can't answer, even if they can't call, just say, hey, I know your mom just died. She was such a beautiful spirit. She really touched my life. I'm not expecting a response. I just want you to know I'm thinking about you, or, whatever that may be. And honestly, one of our old neighbors called shortly after V Ben, and sometimes I would pick up. I didn't know who I was going to pick up to and who didn't. Um, and she was telling me about how her journey through infertility and how it took them, almost 7 or 8 years to have their daughters, and how she was like, I can kind of relate. I know my grief is different, but I experienced like years and years of grief of not being able to have that child that I always wanted. And we really connected on that, that there's so many different kinds of grief and so many different ways that we all experience our struggles. But just being able to be there in those moments for one another. And even, a lot of people can or don't want to talk about it. And I completely get it. But just letting, them know that you're here, you're listening, sending some food. My cousin immediately sent us groceries the night we came back, and just those little touches that are just really make you feel loved. So,
I love that theme of showing up. And I love the people who aren't afraid to be a little messy and say, I don't really know what I should say, but I love you and I'm here for you. And can I do your laundry or, something like that.
exactly.
Yeah. And I love what you said, Hans, about giving space and holding space. Though that distinction there is really important. You've both given me a lot to think about. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's just something that society can, at large, can really benefit from. But I wanted to kind of switch gears here and actually, hear about your work with Head Start. And, you're supporting a lot of, families in a very meaningful way in those very delicate years of life, first 5 years. Um, what are the main goals for the Head Start program overall, and how do parents even, find out about, these services that you give them?
Well, Head Start is a wonderful program that was established about 60 years ago. And the whole point of Head Start is to break the cycle of poverty. And so it's really a kindergarten readiness program, but it's so much more than that because these children are not just learning to count and the alphabet, but they're learning about compassion and sharing and having responsibility for yourself and your actions and being part of a team. So they're learning really important things before they go to kindergarten. And these are families that would not otherwise be able to access this kind of education and child development. They can't afford a preschool or daycare. So this is a free service that is provided to very low income families. And I always think about this one case, this lovely case, to kind of share about the compassion in Head Start that these children learn. There was a little girl, and she came to one of our Head Start centers, and she has Down syndrome, and she was nonverbal, and she didn't want to be with anyone but her mother. And so her mother would bring her to Head Start in her stroller every day. And, soon she could communicate a little bit through sign language. So the Head Start teachers who didn't know sign language quickly went about learning sign language for this little child. And so they started communicating with her. Her name was Camila. They started communicating with Camila through sign language. And so Camila started to come out of her shell and interact with the teachers. And her little classmates were kind of watching what's going on here, and they started picking up some of the sign language, and they started, communicating with Camila, and then they started advocating for her. They were like her little spokespeople, and like, Camila wants to do this, or can we, Camila do that, and then lo and behold, Camila, one day starts speaking. It was incredible. And it was all because like this community of support, which included other 4-year-olds, 4-year-olds who are learning to support this child and be her advocate. And I don't think that's something that a child is just going to learn, on the playground or whatever. It's these teachers, these incredible teachers who are teaching these children how to be good humans. So it's not about just the reading. Yeah, a lot of our kiddos can read when they're going to kindergarten. It's pretty amazing. But they're also really great little people. And I think that's where that gets me in the heart. And I'm just so proud of that what the environment that our teachers are able to create where every student is supported.
Yeah.
And there's just a culture of inclusion and belonging and love. It's just a wonderful thing to see.
That's so beautiful. Well, it's been so wonderful speaking with you and really enjoyed our time together. And we always try to close with kind of our signature question, which is, looking back at your own journey and in motherhood and parenting, if you could like go back and talk to your younger self, just starting out with your daughter, kind of what advice, what tips would you give her? And what would you be giving to parents out there who might be just starting or might be in a moment of struggle? Or
I would say to trust your instincts. Don't worry too much about what other people say or do. You know what's best for your child and your family, and to trust your instincts.
so
Amazing.
helpful.
Yes, absolutely resonates. And so thank you so much, Elizabeth. We do our best to trust our instincts most of the time.
It's tough. Because there's a lot of noise, isn't there?
Yes.
Very important as a parent. And things aren't ever perfect. Like things will go wrong and you'll make bad decisions, and there'll be a lot of frustration and challenges, but along the way, your path as a parent, supporting that little kid is very, very important. And for all parents out there, you're doing an amazing job as you are. And so, well, thank you, Elizabeth. You're doing a wonderful job in service for everyone out there. And so thank you so much for taking some time to share your story and be with us on our podcast.
Well, thank you so much, Christina and Hans. It was an absolute pleasure being with you. And I just love what you're doing for parents. And I admire you both. And I'm grateful for what you're doing. So thank you very much for having me.